Welcome to the $1 Billion Podcast, a weekly show about the entrepreneurial journey and making it big in any industry. We're your hosts, Joe White and Kane Daniel. Joining us today on the $1 Billion Podcast is Taz Zaide, a mortgage agent and team leader with Mortgage Architects. A high-performing finance professional, Taz specializes in real estate lending and has built a reputation for doubling his business year over year. In 2024, he was recognized as one of CMP's top 75 brokers in Canada, highlighting his achievements in the industry. Collaborating with top-tier real estate agents, financial planners, and wealth advisors, he delivers expert mortgage advice and tailored financial solutions. We are happy to have you with us, Taz, so welcome.
Thank you so much, Joe and Kane, for having me here.
Our pleasure. So, we normally start off with trying to find out what got you here. What was your journey into where you're at today? So maybe you could tell us a bit about your origin story. We'll act like you're a superhero, and you can give us your origin story.
For sure. So, initially, I do come from a lineage of bankers in my family. So we've always been in banking, and again, not in the mortgage side specifically, but just in the retail side. And on my end, I started off as a teller at a bank. And from there, I got inspired from my cousin, who was a mortgage broker. And he kind of showed me the ins and outs of how it works, his scheduling, how he makes money, and why he loves what he does. And at the time, I was about maybe 20, 21. I really didn't know what to get into and what to do once I'm done university. So I kind of looked at him for guidance. And when I saw, just what he was doing and how motivating it is and kind of what he's chasing for, it inspired me to get into that same field. And that's kind of where I stepped foot into the mortgage brokering world, so to speak. I remember the first program that I got into was the Mortgage Specialist in Training program at a bank. And it was a pilot program because it was for inexperienced people that had never been in the mortgage space before. People with no mutual funds experience. Generally speaking, you would want to have that if you're getting a mortgage specialist position in the bank. But for this particular position, because it was a pilot program, it was for people that had zero experience. So they tried it out for a year. It was great. You had a base salary. They trained you for that whole year for the ins and outs of how to get business, how to structure mortgages, and you're getting paid, right? So it's a great stepping stone. But really, ideally for me, it was a matter of just learning, getting into the waters, learning a little bit about how it works. So I have a head start, and then switching over to the broker world, which is exactly what I did, because my plan was never to stick at the banks. It was always to go over to the broker world and have, a wide variety of options available for our clients. And I think that really helped kind of get my foot in the waters, or, because there's a big learning curve in mortgages, right? Especially if you're new. I really tip my hat off to people that come into this world with zero financial service experience, because they can be a big, big learning curve, right? So I did get a little bit of help with that pilot program. I don't think it even exists anymore, which is sad, but it was great for people starting off.
Maybe they spent too much money on it.
Yeah,
they were paying too many salaries.
Yeah.
Were you able to, Taz, during that? Were you able to during that program? Were you writing business as well, or just learning throughout the year?
So it was interesting because for the first 6 months, you weren't supposed to originate any mortgages. If there were any mortgages you had, you refer it off to a mortgage specialist level 2 is what they called it. But what we were considered was a level 1. So until the 6 months were over, you could not really originate your own files. But after the 6 months is when you can start keying in files, because you'll have enough experience and enough knowledge to be able to do that without, the guidance of someone else, so to speak.
Okay. All right. And did you find it important to have that financial backing for the year?
100%. Yeah. I think, if you're just kind of getting into the waters without some type of financial assistance, even in the back end, it can be very difficult because there's added pressure on your side to, chase your next paycheck, so to speak, right? So
Yeah, that makes
it really
sense.
helps, right? You don't want to just go all in. You want to kind of ease into it slowly until you're ready to take it full time and put all your eggs in one basket.
Do you think that that was your biggest challenge when you first came into the industry? Like, in other words, do you think that you would have, I guess, still made it if you had joined the brokerage, if you became a mortgage agent right away on full commission? Do you think that you would have had the same outcome?
So see, and I know I mentioned about my cousin kind of being in the mortgage broker world. I personally do think guidance is very, very important, right? You need to have a mentor, or you need to have someone that you can look up to that can help you get your feet dirty, right? So if you don't have that, yes, it can be very challenging. There's a big learning curve, right? There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to kind of understand, and it's different to other types of sales jobs, so to speak, right? So I think, yeah, definitely it would have been much harder. If you are starting off, I definitely think you should find a mentor or find someone that you can look up to, whether it's in your brokerage that you're planning on joining, or just someone that you've connected with that is already in that mortgage space, right? And can really help you learn about, not just products, but yes, sales as well, right? And how to get business.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you recall what you, if anything, think that was the most important thing that you picked up in that training? Like what made the biggest change or had the biggest impact on your career, if anything?
I think the biggest thing it gave me was a head start on learning about, policies and programs. It didn't really help when it comes to sales. Generally speaking, sales is one thing. You could be a great salesman, but if you don't know how to underwrite a mortgage and kind of, get the structure right for the file, it doesn't really help, right? You'll be spending 2 hours on an application, which is a waste of time, where you should be spending, maybe 30 minutes on it at max, right? So it's all about efficiency too. So I think it really helped me in the sense of knowing how to key in and structure files, but it didn't really help from a sales perspective. That's something you have to kind of learn from others. And there's so many different ways you can go about that, right? There's webinars, there's realtors, there's financial advisors. So that you kind of start to find on your own on kind of what works for you.
And Taz, coming from the bank, like you came from, you mentioned earlier, a long line of bankers. So you're probably a little bit more familiar than maybe others coming into the bank and then going on to you said the pilot program. So you were doing mortgages as well at the bank. Was there anything when you came into the broker side that was especially surprising for you? Was there anything that you didn't expect maybe? I'm looking at this from the perspective of people that are sitting at a bank right now thinking about, hey, maybe I can make this jump over. What was, if anything, what did you find that was maybe surprising or unexpected?
Yeah, I think the different products and policies of different lenders that were available was so vast that you had to pinpoint down to maybe a handful of lenders that you would decide to actually work with, because there's just so many different lenders and different products, right? The other thing that was interesting was when I was at the bank, we didn't have products like insurable mortgages. It was just conventional, right? It was uninsured and high ratio. That's it. There's no such thing as insurable. So coming over to the broker world, you learned about insurable mortgages, the different rates available for those, and how certain people could qualify for those better rates. That really helped as well. So that was a big change. But aside of that, especially on the B side, that was a policy, sorry, a product that we didn't have access to when we were at the banks. We had to refer those files out to our partners. But that was also a big learning curve. But it was great because it opened up a lot more doors for potential clients that you originally could not help or had to refer out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we hear that a lot from we see a lot more people from the bank coming in now. That's one of the big benefits that they'll say is, well, I have way more product now. I'm not just selling from one lender. Was there anything about the role that stood out for you in terms of like your day to day, like what a typical day might look like as a mobile rep at a bank, for example, or as a mortgage agent or broker? Again, looking for. I think really looking at this from the perspective of those looking to come in, And maybe if I can just add my own thing, because the way we look at this really is when you're in this industry, you are entrepreneur, right? So you're running your own business, even as part of a brokerage or a network. Whereas I think there's a little bit of a different thought when you're part of a bank. I don't know if that has been your experience too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue when you were planning your day working at a bank was you had to rely a lot on the bank, right? So by that I mean there were some mortgage brokers or mortgage specialists in this case, because they're at the banks, that were relying heavily on, let's say, branch deals. Now, one, you don't know if that's going to continue as you go through your career, right? On getting deals from the branch. But two, if you leave banks, all those referral sources are gone. You don't get to keep those referral sources, right? But that's besides the point. The other thing also being that you get paid less on those files if you get branch referrals, right? So it didn't really help in growing your business in that sense. And it didn't push you to get your own referral sources. So when I was at the bank, I did kind of heavily rely on the branch. And, that didn't really help because I had contacts that would kind of move to different positions or even different branches. And now they weren't allowed to refer anymore because I was assigned to that specific branch. Now I'm losing business, right? It's not like a real estate partner or a financial advisor where they can just pick and choose who to give their business to and they can, keep a lifetime partnership with you. So there was a lot of risk associated with that. And, that was kind of the biggest downside when it comes to scheduling your day is, yeah, you have your realtors that you're working with, but then you also relied on the branch because especially if you're new in the industry, you're not going to have a lot of real estate agents from the get-go, right? So, which I think kind of gave some bad habits to me because I should have obviously tried to get more self-sourced business rather than relying on the branch. But I kind of pivoted very quickly over to the self-sourced referrals when I learned that.
Yeah, I think that point is really well made. We talk a lot about this as well as really in any entrepreneurship type role where you're sourcing your business is if you are receiving referrals, not to rely on any one source because there's obviously a danger with that. Even if you are sourcing it yourself through maybe one medium or social network, even that might be a risk if things change, which they do. So I think that's a really good point is to differentiate a little bit. In terms of your motivations, your work ethic, anything that was different for you coming from the bank? It might seem like it because it is your own business. You can help more people. Was that the case for you? Did you find yourself maybe more inspired, working harder, working different after that transition?
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, you just have such a wide variety of options available all of a sudden, right? It's not just a business, but now you can do private. Now you can do B. So you can approach referral sources with a different angle. You don't have to just, push the fact that you work at the bank and you have a business, but you have other options available for the clients as well. So that really helped, right? And aside of that, I found that I really kind of got into cold calling real estate agents when I switched over to the broker world, and that really helped. Some people don't like cold calling. Some people don't believe in it. I heavily believe in it. I think it's the best thing you can do if you're starting off and you don't have any knowledge of or any partners in the game, right? So it definitely works. At the end of the day, it is a numbers game, but obviously you have to know, the right scripts, how to do it, and you have to be confident, right? So I think that really helped. And I guess once I stepped foot in the broker world, I did that a lot. And I did that every day, maybe 20, 30 realtors a day. And that really gave me a push on my end.
Wow, what was that like when you were first meeting with a realtor that you hadn't dealt with before? Did you go out to see them? Did you call them? What was your process like?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I guess pre-COVID, where meetings were more frequent, I would go into their office to see them, or we'd meet somewhere like a Tim Hortons. But post-COVID, it was all virtual, so it was over Zoom meetings. I actually never met a lot of these partners that I work with. It was all virtual and just on the phone, and so it was really just calling them, giving them something of value, and then saying, "Hey, I'd love to explain more over a quick Zoom meeting. Let me know if you have 15 minutes for a call." And then just following up with them every week or so. I think that was the main thing, was the follow-up, right? If you don't have a good follow-up, who cares if you book meetings, because they're just going to forget about you and the next agent is going to call them, right? So, yeah.
I love that principle. I mean, I don't think anyone really likes cold calling. Not that I know of. I think a lot of people do it because they feel it's necessary. Like you said, it'd be interesting if we talked to someone and said, "Oh, I love doing that. That's all I want to do." We haven't found that to be the case, but I think a lot of people that, like you said, are consistent and like you mentioned as well, knowing their script is super important. I was going to ask if there's any like secret sauce there that you can share, but I think the giving value and content maybe is a big part of that. And then also being consistent doesn't necessarily mean there's a silver bullet in that, I don't think. But I did want to ask, when you started calling them, I would assume that your first 100 calls, cold calls to potential realtors, might be a lot different than what you're doing now, for example, in terms of the script, in terms of the tonality, in terms of understanding pain points very quickly. Is that something that you could say is a learned skill for you?
Definitely, yeah, yeah. I mean, I did read up on some books as well on cold calling, the right way to do it, the tonality. Like really, what it comes down to is adding value, right? When you call, you don't want to just say, "Hey, I'm a great mortgage agent. Let's meet up. I want to show you what I can do for your clients." You have to tell them what you can do for them, right? Like, "Hey, I can help you close an extra 4 or 5 deals. I've got this program that has helped other realtor partners. I thought you might be interested too." And pause and hear what they say, right? Don't just keep talking. Let them be like, "Oh, okay, interesting. Well, what is it?" And just be like, "Hey, we've got a few strategies. Love to show you if you have time for maybe a 15-minute Zoom call this week. I was Monday or Wednesday at 10 or 12 p.m., right? Or 10 a.m., 12 p.m. Yeah. And that's kind of where you go, you go from there.
And it was still a lot of failing, I assume. You're not going to get everyone. You're not going to get a hold of everyone. And then everyone you get a hold of, you're not going to be able to book a meeting with. And everyone you book a meeting with, I assume you're not going to get that person as a referral source. So how did you manage that? Because I think this is one of the reasons why people don't like doing it. They don't like facing a lot of rejection over and over and over. So is that something that you just had inside of you to that you could just withstand that? Or did you have specific strategies, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, it really is a numbers game, because if somebody answers and they're like, "Hey, not interested," or "Sorry, I'm busy, maybe another time," no problem. I won't call them again. I won't call them again another time either. But what I will do is I'll pick up the phone and call the next person, and I'll keep doing that until somebody picks up and they're like, "Okay, yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you do. Let's do it." Right. It really just comes down to that, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to resonate with everybody, right? People have certain people that they resonate with and get along with, right? So you just have to find your people. And once you find those people, you'll know eventually, okay, I'm more likely to connect with this person and have them as a, good referral source as opposed to another person. So it's just really a matter of finding that persona that matches your business the best, right? And that you can work with.
It sounds like something that's really important is mindset, and having the right mindset to be able to do that. Because it's not just about doing it; it's about staying positive while you're doing it. So I think that's really cool that you were able to do that. Is there any other, I guess, necessary skills? Like if you said, if you have maybe a friend of yours or a colleague, they said I want to be a mortgage agent. What would you look for? What do you think is sort of necessary in order to be successful in that role?
Yeah, I think you have to be really self-motivated, right? Like you can't just be like, "Okay, I'm going to work today and tomorrow I'm just going to take the day off or wake up at, 11 a.m. and do nothing, right? Until 2. Like you have to have a fixed schedule. Like, okay, this is my schedule every day and I'm going to make sure I follow this plan. And regardless of what happens, I'm going to stick to the plan, because it's really when you stick to the plan that you get your results, right? And it's not going to be it might not be a 6 month it might not be a 6 month thing. It might take a year. It might take a year and a half, but it does pay off in the long run, right? It really, what I like to say is all the effort you put in now compounds, and then eventually you start seeing the results of all the work you put in. So you have to keep that in mind as well, right? Just keep in mind, again, don't think about your first paycheck for the first 6 months. Think about the business development activities that you have to do, and eventually everything will fall in place. It's just a matter of continuing to do, what you're supposed to do to build your business, right? If you're worrying about deals and where the next deal's coming And again, going back to what we discussed earlier, that's why I mentioned don't just go all in. Try to have some type of supplemental financial support, whether it's another part-time job or full-time job on the side, that will allow you to keep your mind off of worrying about when your next paycheck is coming, so you can focus on what matters, which is business development.
When you started off, or even when you were in training in that program at the bank, was there, or have you looked at doing a business plan? Was that something that helped you, or if you did it, was it important in your development?
So yeah, when it came down to that role, actually one of the first things they asked for was a business plan. That's what they looked at, not just your resume, but they wanted to see what your 90-day, your 30-day, 90-day, and your 1-year plan was, right? They wanted to know what you're going to do to get business, how you're going to attract different referral partners, so on and so forth. So I think having a business plan is extremely important, and sticking to the business plan, not just changing it every week because you change your mind about something, right? Like if you want to really kind of make use of your business plan, you have to stick to it and at least give it 8-9 months before you make any big changes to it, right? Minor changes are fine, but you gotta let the routine work before you can keep changing it, or else it'll never work for you, right? So you got to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, it seems like that can be a differentiator between those who are successful in the industry and those, who have a struggle, and that is really having that game plan to follow. I mean, like you said, you know what, you're your own boss, and when you wake up in the morning, you can give yourself the day off, or you can be a hard boss and put yourself to work. And those who are successful tend to be the ones, in my opinion, that put themselves to work every day, right? And that can't be easy. So I know you followed your business plan, but what at the end of the day motivated you to get up and follow that business plan every day? Because that is something, that motivation, that why is also something that people struggle with.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to look at what inspires you, right? And what your goals are, and why you want to chase this dream, right? Why you want to help clients when it comes to helping them obtain a mortgage. And when you really kind of pinpoint that, is where you can see what the motivation is that you need to chase, right? Me personally, I find that at the end of the day, I always want to get better. I'm never competing with anyone else but myself. So if I see something, let's say, for instance, I did X amount of volume last year. This year, it's like, okay, great. How can I double that or triple that? Right? So that's kind of my motivation, is just being the better version of myself, right? Because at the end of the day, you can never compete with anyone, right? People are always going to have different head starts. What you really have to look at is what you want to accomplish and how you can get there. So you can always set a goal for your, let's say, a specific time frame. And it's okay if you don't meet that goal, right? Because things change all the time, right? Markets change. There are things that happen that might be unforeseen, right? But the main thing is you hit that goal, and then you look at, okay, what can I do to, get to that goal if I haven't gone to that goal yet? So, you just got to push yourself at the end of the day and find what motivates you.
Yeah, and you know what? Some big audacious goals, I think, can help as well, right? You build a structure, you build a business plan. Like if somebody's watching us now and you're thinking, you know what, I want to hit 100,000 in income this year, don't build a business plan. My advice is don't build a business plan for 100,000. Build a business plan for 200,000. And if you fail at the 200,000 and you make 125, you will have exceeded your initial targets, right? So you have to build that big audacious goal, because you don't know at the beginning, right? You don't know if you think your funnel is that you need to meet with 50 realtors a month to make that 100,000, and then you realize 6 months in you have to meet with 60 or 70. You're going to be behind. So it's build that big model, and you've been really successful as in the CMP top 75. Is that something that you do? You look at your goals every year, you readjust them, or what is your process behind that?
Yeah, on my end, what I'm really trying to do is rely less and less on referral partners and more on past clients and past client referrals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's the lowest hanging fruit at the end of the day for me. It's easiest to get business from clients that you've serviced in the past, and they're very happy with what you've done, right?
So do you spend a
So
lot of time farming those clients, like reaching out to them during the year? What's your keep in touch strategy look like?
yeah, so what I like to do is any new client that comes in to my world, I like to kind of add them to a drip campaign, which goes on for about 3 months, just giving them little different tidbits of value throughout the process, right? Whether it's on how we can help them save money after the mortgage closes, pros and cons of certain products, so on and so forth. But essentially, we're reaching out to them every week for 3 months. Post closing, we've got the mortgage anniversaries, of course. But what I found that has really helped as of late is email marketing, right? Having a good email list eventually really pays off when you're sending out tidbits of value to them on different rules changes coming out for mortgages, or maybe just updating them on the market, right? And people will always reach out to me every month and reply to my newsletters or my email campaigns, and come out with a mortgage inquiry. So I think the email marketing definitely helps, but aside of that, I would say definitely reaching out to the client personally after closing at different time frames. So maybe 30 days, maybe another reach out 6 months later to make sure everything's going all right with their mortgage. And then, of course, at the year mark on their mortgage anniversary, right? So that's really paid off, and that takes time. Obviously, if you're just getting into the business mortgage world, you're not just going to start getting past client referrals and past clients coming back right away. But it eventually comes back, right? When a few years have passed, you're going to get those repeat clients and on renewals as well, right? So, yeah.
That snowball effect. Yeah. You have to start with a little tiny snowball first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the experience as well, and making sure that the experience is different from maybe what other brokers might be doing, or what they're going to experience at their bank, and being aware of what's happening in the market, so that you can really give them sort of a wow moment at least once throughout the process that'll help push along and guide those referrals, so that you really are unique in that way. And then it's just about you. And then, as you mentioned, referrals, family, friends, colleagues, how many can you get from one person? Is that something that you look at when you're going through the process from the initial contact all the way to closing and beyond? Do you look maybe for like personal stories or what they're interested in, or anything like that you can help personalize some, maybe some reach out later on? Is that something that you have as part of your process, or that you do naturally?
So I don't do anything in terms of personalization when it comes to the client themselves, but I do ask them, depending on the type of transaction, I'll know who the real estate agent is. If I don't, then obviously I'll know from the purchase agreement. But the other thing is, if they're a client that's new to our world, I'll ask them, hey, do you have an accountant, maybe a financial advisor, a realtor that you work with? And depending on what their responses are, I'll either connect with them after, or I'll recommend them somebody that I know. So now there's kind of a way that I can hand out businesses to my referral partners, and I have a way of generating new referral partners from clients that I had never connected with before because they're organic to me, right? So that's kind of what I like to do, and that's worked very well because it's not just real estate agents and mortgage agents that clients will work with, right? When it comes to getting a mortgage, they may have a financial advisor. They may need an insurance advisor, right? Obviously, they need a lawyer. Accountant could be a very important part of the transaction as well. So it opens up opportunities for you to refer to your partners, which in turn will refer back to you because you're reciprocating business, right? But it also allows you to connect with new partners that you might not have known about, because now you have a triangle of trust. And that's a great way to kind of build your business. If you don't like cold calling, just leverage that triangle of trust, and then it'll be a much easier conversation with them.
You know what? That's a really good point. Something that a friend of mine years ago started doing was having annual barbecue picnic type things, like those types of events. He would have that event once a year. He would call all of his previous clients, invite them out, and they would do, he'd be on the grill and they would do that. They'd have a silent auction. He'd invite his the lawyers that they've dealt with and everybody, and just get them all at one big party. And it was great for him, great for his clients who could bring their kids. He'd have the clowns there, and this was before clowns were terrifying. He had the clowns there and do the balloons and everything else. And it was a great way for him to give back to the community, as well as, get to the point where one of the things he used to say to his referral sources was, I'm here to help you grow your business and introduce you to other individuals who may need your services. And this was a great way to put everybody in the same room, so to speak. It was fantastic. And one of the things you mentioned was about like insurance. How do you find what's your experience been with individuals taking like MPP or another type of insurance at the outset to protect the mortgage? Do you find that was a tough sale? It still is a tough sale, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I do find that there's more value if they have somebody that's experienced in the insurance side go over the MPP for them. So I always send them the details on who to connect with to go over the MPP, right? And make sure that it protects them, has sufficient coverage for their needs, right? Because everybody's different, right? So that's kind of what I found. I always kind of outsource that. I never take that on my end because I feel like, one, that will obviously take more time, but two, I'm not as much of an expert as it. So, I'm obviously going to outsource that to somebody that will be able to have that conversation better.
What's the uptake on that? Like when you outsource that, how is the ratio on that?
Yeah, so generally speaking, if they connect with the individual there that will go over the MPP with them, I'd say about 20% of people will take the MPP.
Okay.
I know when I did it personally, it wasn't as high, so that's where I realized, they have some questions, concerns. And maybe smart. I'm not framing it right. So, it's always better to give it to the professional who's an expert in that field, right?
You know what? That's smart. Knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses is important.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Taz, I'm wondering about, I was just thinking about something you said earlier about people that are coming into the industry, and we talked about mindset a little bit. Being a team leader now, what do you think, like if you had to maybe pick one or two things that you would say, yeah, these attributes or this sets people apart that find that early success versus maybe those that don't, because you must be seeing people come in and then maybe exit the industry and some do find that great success. Is there something common about that set of people that you're able to identify?
Yeah, definitely. I would say somebody that is very self-motivated, someone that's really, and by self-motivated, just to expand, I mean like they're kind of the ones calling you like, hey, I want to get so-and-so going. What's the next steps? Or, I want to start calling referral partners. This is what my plan is. I'm here at 8 a.m. at the office. Very self-motivated. The second thing I would say is, I suppose somebody that is, not under a lot of pressure, not under a lot of life pressure. Because when you are, that's kind of where you're in panic mode, and again, you're rushing things. You're not really taking your time to follow your plan. You're flip-flopping, and you think that if you don't meet a certain deadline, everything's gonna go wrong, and you just need to find a new career. It's never like that, right? So definitely don't be in that scenario. Don't have that added life pressure where there's just something that you need to meet at a specific date, or else if you don't meet that date, something's going to go wrong. which again is usually if it's financial related, which is why I say I always have something on the side. But I would say those two things are the top two. As far as the third, I would say somebody that is kind of comfortable talking with people. They're very outgoing, and again, you don't have to be, but I found that as long as you're clear and concise with how you speak and you're easy to kind of get along with, that's a very important factor to have as well when it comes to becoming a mortgage agent if you're new.
Excellent. I love that. I think that's really important advice and is very impactful for those that are maybe considering coming into the industry, because it's definitely not for everyone at every moment. So I think that's super important advice, and being able to really take an honest look at yourself and make a decision as to, is this going to work for you? Do you have the right mindset? Do you have the right discipline? Are you set up financially in a way that will allow you to do it? So yeah, really, really good points. I did want to ask you one other thing, Taz, that you had mentioned. Coming from the bank, we talked a lot about there's not as many products at the bank that you can have, or you can't service everyone. Is there any particular client story that stands out for you that maybe you were able to help when you went over to the broker side, and that maybe you probably wouldn't have been able to on the bank side?
Or if there was any particularly crazy client that you came across, that would be a good story too.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, it was always those clients that you had issues qualifying that would later be like, oh, but I walked into another bank and they approved me and they didn't have any issues just because their policies were totally different to ours, right? So we found that to be the case a lot. Aside of that, I would say that, again, I've had clients that we haven't been able to service mainly because they wouldn't qualify and only fit on the B side, right? Now we have to refer them out to our partners where we could have done the business ourselves and kept the client for life, right? Made a plan for them, help them switch over back to maybe the A side eventually. But you do kind of lose that client when you refer them out. And that was the biggest downside that I noticed. Once I switched over to the broker world, I didn't have to worry about it anymore because I had all these options, right? So yeah, I wouldn't say it's one particular client, but there's always been these instances where you've had to walk clients more often than not for those reasons. And usually the worst reasons are when they say they got approved by another bank, right? And you don't have access to really other banks besides the one you work at, right? So yeah.
So I know, Taz, you mentioned about mentoring earlier and finding a good mentor. Now, I guess because you're in the team lead, that's kind of your role, is mentoring individuals coming in, right?
That's right.
So what do you find when it comes to that? Is there anything that you find challenging as being a mentor, or something that's consistently coming up that people have, or is it really just a mishmash of different scenarios?
I think it's just about patience. Like, some people just don't have the patience to just stick to the plan, right? Like, we'll create a plan for them. We'll tell them, hey, do this task, and give it maybe a year, and you'll be happiest ever, right? Because you'll meet your goals. If not, be one step closer to meeting your goals, right? And a lot of people just don't have.
Is it kind of just pushing them along as they're going, just keeping them going in the right direction?
It's not even that. It's just doing the work. Like, I find often that people will do the work, but they'll do it for like a month or two, maybe 3 months. And then after, it slowly starts subsiding. And then eventually it's like, oh, they're not doing it anymore. And they're like, hey.
It's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if you want the plan to work, you have to give it some time, an adequate amount of time, at least a year, right? Before you say, okay, this isn't working, let's change things up. But at the end of the day, it can be as simple as cold calling real estate agents, or it can be as simple as, maybe reaching out to people, friends and family, and then, asking about who they know, maybe realtors, financial advisors, so on and so forth, right? So at the end of the day, it just depends on that specific individual and what plan they want to follow. But as long as they follow that plan and continue to follow it, that's all it comes down to. So it's just a waiting game and being patient and motivated, right? And just remember, again,
motivating them, right? That has to be a big part of what you see that you need to do if they're doing if they have the ability to do and follow their plan, does that ever get frustrating? Like knowing that there's a huge light at the end of the tunnel if they just keep working that plan, and you see some people who just start to fall off.
Yeah, it does, and you really want to kind of show them, but you can't, right? Like what the other side entails. But like I said, at the end of the day, you also have to be self-motivated, right?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest light in the tunnel is once you get your first deal, because then you're like, okay, great, now I know what it took to get that deal. But remember, that doesn't mean it's going to take that amount of effort just to get your second deal. It's a compounding effect, right? So it only gets easier and easier over time. So I think at the end of the day, I truly believe if you lock yourself in a room and have an 8-hour day planned out for you, 5 days a week, and you follow that plan for even 6 months, like you're gonna meet your goal, like assuming it's a realistic goal for your first year. Like it's very hard to say you won't, especially when in that time frame, you're just focusing on originating business, right? Or business development. Yeah. Right? You're reaching out to referral partners or people that and that's all you're doing. Like you're gonna get mortgages, that's a given, but you have to just stick to that time frame and don't just stop after a month. Don't just take a day or two off after a month or two, right? Stick to that plan.
Yeah, it's that whole concept of how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? It's you can't jump to the end. You got to do the work every day and be there. That when I wrote my first textbook, that was what it was. I was on a time crunch and I was looking at that thinking, what? I have no idea how I'm going to get through this. And I didn't even know if I could do it. And it just boiled down to, 1 page at a time, 1 hour at a time. And eventually you get through it. So yeah, you're right. That motivation, just like you said, when you were mentioning that once you do the one deal, you see what it's like, and then you start doing more deals. That's where the motivation can come from as well, right? That self-motivation when they see that ball and those checks starting to come in, and they get some happy clients, and
we do see this a lot
that must be super satisfying for you when you're calling a client that has just bought their house and you're following up with them. That must be really satisfying.
Oh yeah, no, definitely, especially if they've been very happy with your services. It warms your heart knowing that you've helped them and you've helped them achieve their financial dreams, right? Which is to own a property. So yeah.
We see this a lot as well, Joe, when we talk about even activity like being present on social media. If you launch a webinar series, or maybe you also have a podcast, or maybe you're doing like live videos and you schedule them. And, we see this, like someone will go on and do it and they'll put all the effort into setting it up, and they'll get one person viewing or 2 people viewing, or, 20 people viewing. And it's like, that's not enough. I'm not getting anything from this. And it's like, well, to your point, Taz, we'll give it a year. Because in a year, maybe you don't have that many people still. Maybe you have 45 viewing, but you give it another year. And also at the same time, you're getting a lot better at it. Every time you do these webinars, every time you understand the content, every time you field questions, you're getting better and better and better at it. And I think I think it's maybe especially now with technology and everything that's happening, it feels like we should be doing more faster. When really, a year or 2, 3 years go by, it's you're either going to do it or you're not, and it will happen eventually. So I think that's really solid advice.
That's a good point, Kane, because Kane and I found this webinar on LinkedIn, and it was from these a group of business coaches. There were about 4 business coaches that were doing a webinar. And I saw the webinar and the ad for it, and I thought, hey, this might be interesting. So I signed up for it and attended it. It ended up that there were 4 business coaches and 2 attendees. I was one of them, and there was another person from the States. And as it was going on, I was looking at Kane, going like, "This is, oh my goodness!" Like they must be pulling their hair out. But they weren't. They went through the whole process just like they would have had 100. And, I asked them the question, does this work for you? They said, yeah, we never know who we're going to meet. It takes one client and you develop a relationship, and then it's like a tree, it branches out from there. So it's always worth it. I mean, it wouldn't be worth it if you didn't have anybody there. But I mean, I guess even if you didn't have anybody there, you could just stare at a mirror and practice, right?
Well, you can also have the recording. And a pro tip on that, at least with the webinars, and if the network allows it, just hide the number of viewers unless you have a significant amount where you want to share it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, look, just to add to that, let's be honest, it takes an hour to do that webinar. So think about it. And that's on one day. So now they met 2 people, right? Let's just say on that one day. Imagine they do that maybe a couple times a week, right? Now you're meeting 6, 8, 10 people a week, which is like, over 40 people a month. Now you multiply that for the year, you've got a database of emails of over 500 probably clients,
Absolutely.
Right? Potential clients. If you're going to market to those people, eventually they're going to come back to you. Because that's what happens with me. I got a lot of clients that I wasn't able to close initially, but I have their emails. I have them in my email list, and I'm sending them pieces of valuable information every week, every month. And eventually they'll reply back and say, hey, I actually was looking to maybe refinance or renew or purchase another home. How can you help? And that's where you start getting more juice from the squeeze, right?
And Taz, that's why you're a successful mentor, because you have that positive attitude. It doesn't matter if you only have 2 people. Now let's multiply that, and then you have 500 by the end of the year. And you know what? That's exactly it, right? That's. I mean, you can't look at these things as failures. You have to look at them as everything's an opportunity. Every new person you come into contact with is an opportunity, right? And that's a fantastic, positive, and effective attitude.
And Taz, you also mentioned email marketing a couple times, and some people think email marketing is dead. We use a lot in our business as well. On the education side, we just know our numbers and we know what our database wants. We know the value that they want. I think that's an important piece about optimizing the actual content and how often you send it out. But obviously, you're using it to good effect. I'm wondering about what you think is going to happen with communication, with technology, with consumer expectations, especially with a lot of the tools that we're seeing come in now to the market. What do you think? Is that going to have an effect on you, on how you communicate with your clients?
I don't think it's going to affect the forms of communication that we're using right now, especially when it comes to email, text, phone calls. Those will always trump anything else, right? Because at the end of the day, those are the most personable. So I think, when it comes to email marketing, even you can't make it very broad, right? Like it has to add value. It can't be fluff, right? It has to be something that will really help the person and actually make them want to open the email and read more about it, right? Like we track our clicks and we look at how many people click the email and click the links to the articles that we add in the email to get an idea of how it's doing and what kind of content we should maybe tailor to for our clients, right, or future clients. So we really look into that, and it has to. At the end of the day, it can't look like a template either, right? It has to be something that looks like it's meant for them. And it's something that they could respond to easily because they know if they just hit the reply button and maybe message you something about it, they'll get a response right away, right? That's something you won't find if you go online and, look up like a digital mortgage brokerage where they're sending a ton of content and they have a ton of social media posts, but it's not as easy to reach out to them because you're going to have to call, maybe reach a call center line and talk to one agent who transfers you to another. You have to be easily reachable, right? So I think with those emails, if you have a very strong call to action, people are going to respond and they're going to want to talk to you more than that other person that they aren't really familiar with that's online, right?
Yeah, it's the authenticity at the end of the day, right? You have to be authentic with your messaging and you have to be available. It's all of those things. I was looking at an article today that was talking about how many retailers closed this past year in the US. And there's a lot of big companies that are scaling back or shutting down. And part of what it was talking about was, some of these companies lost the customer experience. They weren't focused on that. They were focused on expanding or on their tech. But at the end of the day, when a customer can't get a quick answer and doesn't get good customer service, there's a lot of other people that they can go out there and talk to, right?
Exactly. It really just comes down to that, right? And so when they see you as a person, not as an entity, they will contact you more than that big entity that maybe has millions of dollars in marketing. Because at the end of the day, there's no personalization with them, right?
Yeah.
There's no connection with them.
That seems to be future proofing as well. I mean, if you have a personal connection with your client, it's going to be very difficult for someone else to come in there and sort of break that bond. Did you think anything's going to change with the role of the mortgage agent, mortgage broker in the coming years?
I personally do feel that if you are kind of a seasoned mortgage broker, you do have to explore a more direct to consumer route as well. Because now a lot of people are going online to look for mortgages, right? They're searching up low rates or how to get approved, or comparing different things online about mortgages. So you definitely have to have some type of content now more than ever when it comes to having an online presence and reaching out to consumers directly. So personally, I would say if you're not doing that now, you should probably get on board to look to doing that, because it's going to be very important, right? And with the new era of digital mortgage brokerages and mortgage websites that allow you to just apply online in 5 minutes, it's becoming very do-it-yourself for clients, right? And people are starting to think of it less as service now, because they don't realize the value you can bring them, right, in the long run, not just the short run. So if you can really kind of position yourself as an advisor that can help them save money, not just now, but over the life of their mortgage through different strategies and plans that you have for them, they'll value that much more, right? And that'll make you stand out over someone that just, let's say, advertises X rate online, and now people are going and running there to apply without any guidance or any ins and outs of how that mortgage product even works.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, you know what? I even see there are a lot of lead generation companies out there that are online, and they get people to fill out forms, then they send those leads out to different mortgage brokers, but there's not really that personalized attention there. It is really just like data farming, and it's a fantastic industry, isn't it? It's a lot of fun. When you meet your clients, you have a lot of fun. The industry is fun. So, you've said a lot here today, Taz, and I think for anybody watching or listening, I think it's important to take away those, in my opinion, some of the things that you've said. Find a mentor, be authentic, keep going, work your plan, and you will eventually see that success. Sometimes it'll come quickly and sometimes it'll take a little bit longer, but if you work that plan, you'll see your success. So we've been together almost like about an hour, and it's flown by. Before we break off, is there anything else that you want to share that you think might be helpful to somebody coming into the industry, or who might be looking at this and saying, you know what, I don't know if I can do this?
No, I mean, honestly, I would say don't feel don't lose motivation if you're kind of thinking about it and you got your mind set on it. Once your mind's set on something, just act it out and go for it, right? That's how I am. So I think, generally speaking, if you're trying to get into the industry and you're just thinking about it, find everything that will put those little pieces of things into place for you. So find a mentor, make a plan, and make a plan that's reasonable and is obviously realistic, and stick to that plan, right? And that's it. And other than that, just have patience, because at the end of the day, with those all in mind, you will succeed. Like, it's a given. It's the perfect recipe to kind of come out in the end, right? But really, that's all it comes down to. And I'd say mainly patience. Like, you have to have patience, and you have to just follow the plan, and it will pay off. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Taz, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. We look forward to seeing you in the CMP Top 75 again this year, or another category that you want to take over. We wish you all the best in 2025. When we're shooting this today, it's January 2nd, so the year is just getting started. Wish you all the best, my friend, and we've really had a good time and look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Joe and Ken. It was nice talking to you guys as well.
Cool.
Thank you, Taz.
Hey, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the $1 Billion Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode.
For more in-depth entrepreneurial insights, follow us on social media, and for more info on the show, go to billiondollarpodcast.com.
See you next time.